Here at Trusted, we place travel nurses in all 50 states, and we have a lot of resources, such as blog content, events like this, and as well a lot of social media channels that we put a lot of great content out on. During the event, feel free to place your questions in the Zoom chat. I will read them out loud at the end of the presentation, and you'll be able to discuss them with all the hosts. We're obviously here to listen, learn, and connect, so don't be shy. And last of all, research the open road or think about a tiny home. In our agenda, we're going to talk through, is mobile living right for you? Where and how to park, lifestyle considerations, and we're going to have a really pretty lengthy Q&A at the end of the event. So starting off, Ms. Samantha Koerner, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, thank you for coming. So my name is Sam. I have been a travel nurse with Trusted for, I guess, about a year now, maybe a little bit more than that. And I was a nurse of 8 years with a love for the CVICU. I did 3 assignments before I kind of decided that I was sick of the whole packing my car up and moving everywhere, and sick of the scams out there. So I decided to go for a tiny home. And so now I'm currently parked in San Diego while I'm in school. And a fun fact about me is that my first time towing anything was when I towed my tiny house from Idaho to San Jose.
What's up, everybody? I'm Brandon. So I am one of the nurse advocates here at Trusted. Been a nurse for 13 years, from everything from peds to hospice, like all aspects of life, everything in between. Been travel nursing for a lot of that. I've been at Trusted for, I guess, going on 2 years now. I have 2 kids and a wife that go with me. My wife's a nurse as well. We have a massive 40-foot fifth wheel is what we're in now. Random fun fact, I guess, about me, just to throw out oddities, is that I took boxing lessons from the 1985 cruiserweight champion of the world. 2 things: yes, he was 70 when I took them, and yes, it was in prison while I was a nurse there, and he was an inmate. But you know, I didn't learn much boxing, but there you go, it still counts. So we'll jump in. Mobile living, is it right for you? First thing first, I guess, is to talk about budget. I can't say dollar bills, y'all. Like, I'm not cool enough to do that. Wish I was. But budget has got to be the first thing that we all think about before you ever decide to make a purchase like an RV, which may be considered a second home. That is a massive undertaking. And selling everything, jumping into it, and being fully like the nomadic lifestyle is something that has got to take a lot of numbers and calculations. So please start with a budget. My family, we did the whole Dave Ramsey thing. It worked really well to get our debt down and then to give us something where we know where our money's going to. But the biggest thing that we found when we were comparing traveling using Airbnbs or other hotels, whatever we were going to do, it ended up making a lot more sense, because when you look at, like, okay, this example here, if I'm making $5,000 a month as my income, and then I'm spending $3,000 of that on this really nice Airbnb, there's no difference in me taking a rural position making only $2,500 a month, but I am still only paying $500 a month for a campground somewhere. So the savings, if you're actually putting numbers to it, pay attention to that. It's not all look at what the massive pay package is, and then don't pay any attention to the rest of that. Specifically, tiny homes or RVs, I'll kind of touch on that, Sam, that you may be able to pull a second mortgage or just have a mortgage on your RV, as long as I think they have a bathroom and a bedroom, and a kitchen maybe. I think they're considered a second home. This is where having an awesome tax professional in your pocket, everybody should know one as a travel nurse. So please talk with them. Don't take our word on it. But there are a lot of loopholes that you can get into. my home base is in Memphis, and we use that as our primary residence with a UPS store address. And we are tax compliant with everything. Like I pay taxes whenever I work in Memphis, but please have that tax professional there. That's something that I didn't add on here, but definitely goes into money. Just biggest thing on this one, don't assume that you will ever save money. Do your own calculations. Sam, you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, sure. So some of the pros and cons that I just want to talk about when it comes to, some of these might be a little bit more focused towards tiny home living, of course, and Brandon, please jump in if anything comes up for RV that might be a little different. But for me, one of the positives of going tiny was that I was sick of packing up my car and just having my car and driving everywhere. You know, I was originally doing 3-month contracts at a time because I was like, I just want to do this. I just want to keep going and going. And on my 4th assignment, I got scammed. And it was, you know, I'm one of those people that honestly, I just learned through like my mistakes. And so I made a mistake and I learned, and I was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I'm sick of, you know, every time I get a assignment, having to spend so much time trying to vet for another place. You never know what you're going to get. You have to find furnished. And so once I got to my next location, I was actually in Seattle, and I started thinking about like, well, why couldn't I do a tiny home? And I actually was kind of talked out of the tiny home thing at first, and I started looking at RVs. And for me, RVs just aren't home. They don't feel like home. I knew this was something I was going to do for like 3-4 years at least. And so I wanted something that was going to be mine and for me and what I could do with it. So it was definitely a pro that I could design a place that feels like home to me. Some of the things that I would definitely caution you to think about are, how often do you want to move your home? Is this something where, you know, maybe you don't want to do travel nursing anymore, or you want to only do a little bit more travel nursing, but you mainly want to have a park somewhere? And it's like, okay, that might work for you. They'll still build it on a trailer so that you can tow it, and you can pay people to tow for you. So you don't have to worry about it if you don't want to. And I've met people who live in tiny homes that pay people to move. For me, I went from Idaho to San Jose to Seattle to San Diego. And so I wanted to be able to move it myself. And something you need to know about moving it yourself is that you have to have a vehicle that will move it yourself. So I traded in a wonderful Jeep that I loved, and I traded it in for an older truck that is a 1-ton truck that is huge and is a diesel engine, and it actually costs more a month than my like almost brand new Jeep did. So those are considerations to think about for sure. My first time ever driving my truck was to go to Idaho to tow, because I just didn't want to make the trade. So when I did it, I just kind of went all in, and I made it work, and I wouldn't look back. But those are things that you just have to think about, being able to tow and learning to tow. Also, you know, designing your house yourself is great. Mine is about 13 feet tall. The thing with that is you really have to think about when you are towing, like what routes you're going to take and what bridges there are, because there are some clearances that are low and you're in trouble. So I always have to think about that. Always have to think about where I'm going to stop for gas, because there are gas stations that I have gone and I can't get in, just because I'm like, oh shoot, I'm close to E, you know, and you burn through your fuel when you are towing. So just like lots of things you have to think about. Another thing is finding a place to park. So tiny homes aren't accepted everywhere. I have had to do some of investigations and calling places, and you just have to call and talk to them. There is something called an RV certification, and some tiny home builders will do it, and my tiny home builder did, and that's why I chose them. So they give you a certification, and it says that your house is built to the same standards as an RV. So that means I have all the same hookups, and I can hook up at any park that has those traditional hookups. Doesn't matter if you have that, some places still won't take you. That was the lesson I had to learn. So finding a place to park is not always the easiest thing. And sometimes you'll find a place that says like, no, we don't take them. And you talk to them and you send them pictures and you just you stay on top of them and tell them you're a nurse, and they will be like, okay, fine, we'll take you. And, you know, you're a great tenant. And then they're like, okay, well, we would do this again. Also thinking about, I know, talking about what Brandon said about the cost of parking and housing. So when you park, I'm paying my mortgage monthly, but I'm also paying to stay where I am. So in San Diego, this is one of the best places I found, but it's about $9.75 a month. And then you have to think about your utilities on top of it. So just things you really kind of have to work through. I wouldn't say it's necessarily cheaper. I just think it depends on what you want.
I completely agree with that. I think the biggest reason that we all kind of jump into this, or that we need to know when we jump into it, is why we're doing it. For us, I mean, these are just some examples of why someone may want to jump into the nomadic life and being a travel nurse in an RV. For us specifically, it was traveling with our family. Me being a nurse and my wife being a nurse gave us both an opportunity to work. So bringing family along was something that we wanted to do. Watching your kids be able to see things, like we've been to, I think, 27 or 28 states now and Canada. So a lot of things that you can go and see out there and give the opportunity to your family to join along with you, rather than just having those show offs or whatever you want to call those moments that you have with your family over FaceTime. Second is convenience. Like Sam said, it's lovely not to have to pack up everything every 13 weeks. The mattress is always comfortable. I know where I'm going to sleep. The stains on my chairs here, I know who put them there. You don't have to guess at that. So yeah, the convenience factor of just having everything here is huge. I remember my first, one of our first contracts when we were heading down the road. My wife stops me and says, "Hey, I think I left something," and like in a panic moment. And I said, "You realize like literally everything we have is being drugged behind us." And that moment of just, oh, wow, that's so nice. It's a wonderful feeling not to have to cram everything in the back of a Subaru and head down the road. I'm not a Subaru person, by the way. That's a whole nother debate. So cool. How and where to park, and Sam kind of touched on these. You can go ahead, Casey. So 3 things that we want to look at, or I guess, or that you may not know or think about. Campgrounds, of course, they're the easiest one to find. There are resources out there. I'm wearing a Campendium shirt because Campendium is an app that my family uses daily to find where we want to be. I have stayed at campgrounds travel nursing that cost, outside of Denver, I was paying almost $2,000 a month, right under like $1,900 to stay there. I have found campgrounds outside of Tucson for an assignment that are $800 for the year. It is 100% up to you on where you want to go and how frugal you want to be. That goes back to that budgeting thing. 2 other things that we grabbed a hold of are boondocking and mooch docking. Boondocking is where you are staying without hookups. You are completely self-reliant in your RV. So we're in a 40-foot fifth wheel. We have 75 gallons of fresh water. We have, I think, 60 gallons of gray tank and black tank. That's shower water and toilet water. And then I have solar power on our rig, so I can park my camper literally anywhere we want to, and stay there for free. And especially out west, there's a lot of BLM land, Bureau of Land Management, and that is just free land that you can go and stay on. A lot of them do tell you there's limits. I will not, tell you that I've stayed longer than that. I can't confirm or deny that one, but that you can stay out there for some pretty good bits of time for free. And then mooch docking is pretty much where you find a friend's house, or there are actually apps called like Boondockers Welcome, where you stay in someone's driveway, and then you can plug in with an extension cord or use their water spigot outside the house to fill up your tanks. So there are a lot of different options that you can look at for where to stay. Definitely the most budget friendly though is boondocking. There was, I think we did 6 months straight where we didn't pay anyone for where we were staying, which is a huge plus and a great feeling at the end of that. Route considerations, again, Sam mentioned those. Specifically, you need to have something that you can use to guide you. Like we use a GPS, it's a trucker GPS that you can find. A lot of RV dealerships sell them. But the map system that they have on there, you can program in how tall you are, how long you are, and like how many propane tanks. Everything goes down into what's legal and where you can go, and it will guide you around all of that. There are some apps on the phone that you can download and do that too. Haven't used them since I have the GPS, but it's definitely, you don't want to be caught in one of those oh crap moments where you are every time you go over under an overpass and they have the little 13 feet tall sticker or clearance or whatever that is, and then you just like, oh God, how tall am I? I don't remember. Like that's not the point at 70 miles an hour on the interstate that you want to try to guess at how tall you were. So yeah, that makes for just some puckering moments. Been there, done that. And then I'll let you kind of, Sam, jump into specifics on tiny homes. You have more on that.
So my tiny home considerations. So tiny homes don't automatically come with the things Brandon's talking about. So it's amazing because you can build it to whatever you want, but then you also have to think about what do I want and what can I afford? So there are so many things I would have loved to do on my house that I was like, budget's not going to let me do that. So what can I do instead? So you forfeit things here and there. One of the things I ended up choosing not to do was I chose not to do holding tanks. This means I can't just park anywhere like Brandon does. I have nothing to hold my sewer, nothing to give me water. I have to have full hookups. So I have to be able to park mainly at any place that has a full hookup. Now, that means there are obviously RV parks are going to have full hookups. There are places that I've called that are like national parks, and I'm like, hey, I'd like to just drive through, like, and I'd like to stop, and they won't have full hookups. They'll have, you have to be self-contained for, the night or 2 nights you're going to be there. So that does limit me in some sense. I think that what I've learned is the RV life does allow for a little bit more flexibility. And I don't know if tanks are something you can add on after, but at the time it was something that sorry, my dog, Misha. At the time, it was something I chose not to do. So you do need to know that. You need to know where you're going to go and if you're going to have the full hookups for it. I know some people asking in the chat as well, with tiny homes, you can make them any size you feel comfortable with. So if you want to tow something that's 40 feet long, go for it, but you got to tow 40 feet. And when Brandon talks about having a fifth wheel, his fifth wheel sits on top of his vehicle, so it sits in the bed of his truck. So it's a little bit different. You get more stability. So he's very long, but you got a little bit more stability than if you're just towing like I am. My house is 22 feet long, and with the top of the trailer, it's about 26 altogether. So I'm towing about 26 feet behind me. And like I said, it's 13 feet tall. So it does have a little waiver. There are so many things you can do with towing, suspension bars and everything to kind of help with that. But it is important to know the size and height, because I went to a place for the first time and I said, oh yeah, it's 22 feet long. And I got there and they said, well, actually with your hitch, it's 26 and you can't park in this spot we had for you. And I was like, okay, good. So, and he's like, and also you're too tall and you can't get past our like low power cords. And I was like, okay, good. And so, you have to roll with those punches because things are going to happen. But that's just kind of, like I said, I kind of learned as I went. And as I mentioned before, the RV certification can be something that helps. It just depends on the place, and that not all RV parks will take tiny homes. So, something that I would say the RVs are a little bit easier in that sense for sure. But I can't say I've ever walked in an RV that I have felt is as much at home or as much a place as my place, that it really does feel like home for me.
I'll let you kind of jump on that one, Sam. I mean, we kind of pounded that one to death, but
Sorry, I kind of jumped on the gun on that one. You know, you just get flowing and I forget where we put it on the slides. I think the main thing here is I'm sure people want to know about like where parks are in relation to assignments. So I can talk about my experiences, and then Brandon, you can maybe talk about some of yours as well. In San Jose, I found a park that was 10 minutes from downtown and about 20 minutes from my assignments. That wasn't bad. And in San Diego right now, I am in the like in Encinitas, so I'm not in downtown. So if you did have a job, you know, downtown, you would have a little bit of a commute, but it's 30 minutes downtown. So that's still, for me, that kind of commute isn't bad. When I was in Seattle, I actually didn't find a park in Seattle. I found a private property where somebody did have full hookups, and I just hooked right up in on there and parked on their property, and it was a lot cheaper. And you can find places like that. I would recommend definitely going on to Facebook and joining any like tiny home places or tiny home groups that you can find on Facebook, because you can find a lot of people to really help you. A lot of tiny home places are cropping up now as well. So for me, I haven't had a hard time. Let's see, I was about 30 minutes outside of Seattle, so still not bad. I haven't had an issue with that, but I know you're gonna have a harder time, obviously. If you are in downtown and you want no commute, you're not gonna find a park right downtown with no commute.
yeah, I'll throw in the same thing. When I stayed in Denver, it's about what do you want. So we weren't necessarily looking to save a lot of money staying in Denver. I just wanted to be in the mountains. That's why you go there, to enjoy the outside. And so I don't want to stay in downtown Denver. I could have for a little bit cheaper money, and for parking literally 3 feet away from my neighbor, where I get to hear all of their midnight conversations as well, in a really tight campground. We opted to spend a little bit more money and to go into the mountains, and I had an hour commute, but I was at a really awesome campground. It cost a lot more money, but I mean, I'm driving out there 3 or 4, I mean, it ended up being like 5 or 6 days a week when they let you pick up overtime. But you know, you plan on having an hour commute. It's whatever you want to make of it. Sometimes that's what's most important, is being in a certain location. Sometimes it's, hey, I just want the convenience of being right next to the hospital.
All right, so for lifestyle considerations, for me, I know somebody also asked in the chat, I do have a dog, but she is about 13 pounds. So pretty much my tiny home is made just for her. It's her house. It's her mansion. I think people do live with dogs in their RVs as well. It depends on the size. I definitely say that people with bigger dogs have a little bit of a harder time. For all the people I've met, most of them do have a little bit of smaller dogs. For the minimalist lifestyle, you definitely have to be willing to get rid of some stuff. This is not like if you have 10 closets and every one of them is full, you're not going to fit that in your 250 square foot house. You just have to pare down. It's part of the lifestyle. It's actually one of the things I really liked about it, because I find in general, as I became a travel nurse, I started paring down anyways, because there's less and less stuff I wanted to bring with me. But now I have a place where I have everything where I need it to be and all of my stuff with me, and it's great. But I also had to have some extra purchases. So I had to buy a vacuum that was small enough that like also folds down, that like fits into a little cubby place. And I had to buy things that are going to fit my house. So it is minimalistic in a sense, because you can really pare down a lot of stuff, but then you also have to make extra purchases to fit your place as well. Internet and cable. One place I went, they had park Wi-Fi. It's fine, but it's not great. You're not going to have like, you know, streaming on that really. So I have my own internet box, which was installed. You can have it installed, like Cox did it for me. You do have to pay to have them install the wires, and then you can hook up. That's one of the parks I've been to. It just depends on where you're going to be as well. Like I said, one of the perks of having a tiny home is that the possibilities are endless when it comes to building. So for me, it was super important that I had a good kitchen and I had a good bathroom, and I had to have a washer dryer. because as you all know, you're working 3 shifts, 3 12 hours, maybe more. And the last thing you want is to have to go to a laundromat and wash your scrubs because you picked up an extra shift and now you don't have an extra pair and something happened. You already used your extra pair at work. Who knows? All the things that happen when you're on the floor. But I did that one time where I was in an Airbnb that I had to take my clothes somewhere to get them washed at a laundromat. And I just was like, I don't want to do that again. So it was really important that I had that as part of what I needed. So it's all about what your needs are, what you want. I also wanted a loft. So that's what I have. My stairs were originally smaller, but because I have a dog, I wanted to extend them and then I made them into storage. So there's a lot of things that you can do, which are great. And it can be a lot of fun. And like I said, it's what I want versus what I can afford. There are definitely things I made sacrifices on because I was like, I don't have the money for that. I would have loved to do sun panels and, tanks and everything. But it was just a little bit too much. Even composting toilets, which I looked into, way more than I could afford. But you do in a tiny home. I mean, they're not the RV toilets. They're not the little, push down. You get a real flushing toilet if that's something that's a concern for you. And like I said, tiny homes don't come with all of the built-ins of an RV. So a lot of the RVs I've seen, they're going to come with the built-in seating areas and the built-in beds. So I had to buy my own mattress. I had to design the areas what I wanted. I had a bench installed and I had to buy the things I wanted for it. I had to have a table made to fit the space. So it's great because it's exactly what I want, but I had to put in a little bit extra work than just buying something that's already pre-made. Last thing is that I live alone. I know Brandon's going to talk about this as well, is that he is with his family, which is going to be a big difference for us. I can't imagine sharing 250 square feet with anybody else. People will come visit for a couple of days or a couple of nights, and that's about all I can do. It's a very small space. And so I love it. For me and my dog, it's perfect. But you have to figure out what's going to be right for you. I know people watch those tiny home shows and people are always like, oh yeah, I'm moving in with my boyfriend and it's like 100 square feet. And I just cringe, but it works for some people. Second thing is, like I said, mistakes happen. No matter how prepared you are, you never know what's going to happen. I was super prepared. I checked everything out and I still accidentally had my emergency brake for my towing get caught in my lines and snap when I was driving. Those are things I was like, okay, what am I going to do? This just broke. What am I going to do? And I was at a truck stop and a truck driver stopped by and he said, hey, do you need some help? And he helped me jerry rig something until I got to my next post. So there's always things that are going to pop up and there are always people who are going to help. I haven't gone to one park that hasn't had great neighbors willing to help me out, loan me something, get me to the next place, even park me. My neighbor here, he got in my truck and he parked me on this one because I was parked into a really tight spot. So you're always going to have good people. And that's just making sure you reach out and ask.
I love that. And now, to tie into that, the exact opposite of living alone is living with a family in little spaces. We started out in a 27-foot travel trailer that with 4 people and a dog. So it was a lot to be said about living together. We didn't have doors. The only door we had except for going outside of the camper was to go into the bathroom. So no bedroom, like our bedroom didn't have a door. The kids' bunk area didn't have a door. All we had is little slider curtains. And I don't know if you've ever really tried to express your anger with a curtain as you try to slide it shut, but really hard to get pissed off at your wife or kids and then slam that curtain shut. It just doesn't have the oomph. So anyway, side note. But then all things where are you going to put all your kids' stuff? They have toys, they have things multiply. We like to, provide and give. And I think when our Western society, we just like to have stuff. And it's really hard to turn that off and go the other direction. Then as far as that biggest, I think what I like to say for us, the biggest room in our RV is outside. We stay outside pretty much 24/7 all day long. My kids do school outside. I try to work outside as much as I can. It's just using it, taking advantage of that space. And then talking about maintenance. Maintenance is the other big thing. Kind of like Sam said, there's preventative stuff that you have to get done. I saw a question about like Good Sam and other memberships. There are really great memberships out there for some of this stuff. It doesn't ever cover like a good warranty. Have a good warranty, have a good insurance policy to make sure that you can get stuff taken care of. Don't let things slide. We did that with our first camper. One of the reasons we're not in it any longer is we were driving down the road and all of a sudden the rubber roof that I never got on and put sealant on, all of a sudden got air under it and was flapping in the wind at 60 miles an hour. So if you ever want to see picture just the worst movie ever, and that's what it looked like with us driving down, and you got people honking at you like, hey dude, you should pull over. That was us. So lesson learned, this new one, I'm up on the roof pretty often double checking things. You don't ever want to have that OCAP moment of like, what am I going to do? How am I going to fix this? Like Sam said, on the side of the road. Also, like take into consideration, I guess, what your daily driver is going to be, that you're also going to have maintenance on that vehicle as well. We're in an F-350 dually, so 25-foot long truck and a 40-foot long camper. We're really big and there's a lot of stuff that has to be maintained. So just pay attention to all of it. And then the question that generally people like to ask that have no idea about this type of stuff is, where does your poop go? I think it's kind of ironic, like neither of us planned it, but the last slide that Sam had and this one that I have are both pictures of us emptying poop. It just happens, like you're a nurse and you think that, oh man, when I get home, I don't have to worry about that. In a normal house, you don't. You flush a toilet and it disappears. In an RV, you flush a toilet and it sits in a tank until you get ready to empty it. And you have to do that. You can press your luck some, but then you end up, you don't want to ever have like a poop pyramid, or Google some of these terms. You can find them. It's not fun to deal with. But you have to plan on, when are you going to empty it? Staying on BLM land, you can't just open your tanks and dump it out on the ground. You have to take that somehow. We have what we call our schwagon, our just a shit wagon's all it is. And so it's better to get my kids to say schwagon. Anyways, we have that we fill up and have to take and find somewhere to dump it. There are places that you can, like gas stations, truck stops. This picture was in Leadville. It's one of the most beautiful places I've handled my fecal matter in my life. And so just being able to enjoy and figure out how to make the poopy situations a little bit better would be something you got to take into consideration too. We'll throw that out there. That's enough talk about the good stuff.
I was about to say, you never have a conversation with nurses where we don't talk about poop.
Right.
All right, so that's it. So we're gonna go ahead and start taking on some questions. You already have a few in the chat, so I'll go ahead and start reading those off. Let's see. So so Sarah, you asked if this PowerPoint will be sent out. Yes, we're gonna send the recording and the slides out after the event with any other resources that we can provide for you all. Lynn Ann asked, are those BLM places close to assignments, or are you saying they're in between assignments?
So I threw out an answer there, and out west, you can find them all day long. Some are a little bit further of a commute. And again, you have to plan in how long is the maximum amount of time you can stay there. Some of them are only 2 weeks. So you might just have to hook up on every 2 weeks and just drag your camper to another, literally 3 minutes down the road and you're good to go. Some places you never see a ranger and they don't bother you ever, especially if you tell them you're a nurse. We generally get some pretty good treatment. But yeah, out west, you can find them all day. In the east, if you want to go up East Coast, you're probably going to be staying in a campground for the most part.
Okay, awesome. Do either one of you have any thoughts about the vans that people convert?
I'm jealous. That would be my, Once my kids are grown and we don't like they're in college, our plan is to get rid of the big camper and downsize into something like that, that is so much more nimble. It sucks trying to pull a 40-foot fifth wheel into some of the places that I want to go. I do it because I'm determined, but yeah, I would much rather have a van that I can just go wherever I want, whenever.
Awesome. So I know you already touched upon this a little bit, Sam. Amanda asked, can y'all discuss pets? Brandon, do you have anything to add there about pets in an RV? Because I know you mentioned you have a pup too.
We have a small dog, but it's the same situation like Sam said. Most people that live full-time in an RV have a cat or a small dog. The problem with a lot of RV parks is there's breed limits, the same as like an apartment, that you can't have a pit bull in the campground. Like they ask specific questions. So just to be wary of that.
That's good advice. And then for all of these parks, how exactly do y'all find them? Is it Google search or do you have other resources?
I can take one if you want. I Google search. I'm like, okay, where am I going to be? What's located in the area? And then I call them. I just call and call and call and talk to people. And I go on Facebook as well. I joined the Facebook the Facebook tiny home groups. I'm sure there's Facebook RV groups as well. But tiny home groups, because you can, like I said, I think tiny homes are becoming more popular. So little tiny home like spaces are popping up more, and you are going to be able to sometimes find people who will allow you to park on their land for a lot cheaper. Where I was parking, it was $600, everything included, to park on somebody's land privately. So you can find some good deals out there. You can find things. And I know it's a little bit of a trade-off from you're going from finding a place, to live to then finding this, but, finding a place to park, it's a little bit different, but I do still think it's easier than finding a place to live every few months when I want to move, for sure.
And I use Campendium. Like I said, I'm wearing this shirt to support them, but campendium.com is a huge resource, and you can find everything from free places to stay to RV parks to dump stations, to empty your tanks, like everything in between. Great resource.
And I think a couple people have mentioned the Good Sam, and I know you already touched on that, asking if they're necessary or even worth it. And I think someone later on said they've used it a couple of times already. But do y'all have anything to add there about the Good Sam or those RV memberships?
I have Good Sam. We use it every now and then, mainly just to get a discount for something else. Like a lot of RV places offer a Good Sam discount. But you'll end up with a bunch of different memberships as you go along and look in different Facebook groups. Like we're a member of Harvest Host and Boondockers Welcome, Good Sam. We have, there's a ton of them out there. Escapees is another. They all have their perks. Do we use them all the time? No. Is it worth it? Probably not if I put a calculator to it, but it's really nice when someone says, do you have a Good Sam membership? And I can say yes and move right on. So it is what it is.
Okay. And then Sarah asked y'all if you'd be willing to show us pictures of the inside of your homes. So I know that they're both like in spots where they have good Wi-Fi right now, but after the event, when we send out the recording and slides, if they have time, I'll see if they can shoot me some pictures to send to you all, if that's okay with you all. Okay, perfect. And then a couple people have asked about how do you feel about your safety and protection when you're out on the BLM or boondocking?
What was it about guns?
About like gun, like if you do anything for safety and your protection, and how safe do you feel out?
Lock your doors. I feel more worried about stepping on a snake or something than I do about some creeper coming and knocking on my door at night. That's me and my family. But I mean, yes, you should probably announce yourself before you come knock on our door, for the details in that question. Yes.
All right. And Sam, do you have anything to add there about being a single lady? Do you feel pretty safe most of the time?
To be honest, everywhere I have gone, I have had excellent neighbors. I mean, when I first started telling people I was going to do this, and I was like, yeah, I'm just going to stay in like trailer parks. There's a negative connotation. People are like, you're going to stay in a trailer park? Like what? And I'm like, yes, it'll be totally fine. And I do have a security system, and an alarm system because I am alone, but I do not have a gun. No, I think I'm more worried I would hurt myself, to be honest. But I did take kickboxing. So, I am the weapon.
Sam's body is the weapon. And then this is a great question from Daniel. Oh, hi, Daniel. How do you deal with field mice or other critters?
There's a lot of traps sitting around our house. For the most part, it's not terrible until one gets in, and then for whatever reason, they do multiply just like you would think. So yeah, you'll go through a quick infestation where you're poisoning everything and trying to use traps, and then it just stops. A lot of times you can move like where you're parking, especially on BLM lands. If you park on dirt rather than right up next to the grass or weeds or whatever where those animals are going to live, and just be clean. Don't leave your trash sitting outside and attract them. That's asking for failure.
All right. And then I think Daniel also asked, how do you deal with your dog in the RV if it's really hot outside? Do you keep AC running?
For us, we chase the weather. I always take an assignment where it's going to be like highs in the 70s, 80s, and open windows. It's usually pretty good. They have fans in RVs, and I'm sure with tiny homes you can have that added, and it circulates the air pretty good. I mean, we stay off grid, like with no electricity. So for the most part, like on solar power, I don't run an AC period, mainly just because I can't. Have two of them run zero.
Okay.
I
awesome.
have a mini split, so I can do heat and AC. I am kind of cold-blooded, so I tend to have the heat on. But I lived in my tiny house for a little over a year now, so I don't quite have all the answers or expertise as Brandon yet. But from my experience, I've needed the heat a little bit more, but I tend to be in nice, warm places as well. But my mini split will heat up and cool down my place in no time. And I also have a fan, but I prefer to have the windows open for sure.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that, both of you. This is a great question. And I was curious about this myself from Sarah. She said, if you're traveling to a place that doesn't offer places to park your RV or tiny home, where do you leave your mobile home?
Any like boat storage or whatever, any of those storage lots, they'll let you there. If you ever see the campers or boats parked out to the side, you can pay, and it's usually like $80 for a month to just leave it there. So yeah, park it there, come back and get it whenever you need. We do that for vacations, like if we're being full-time, if we need to leave it somewhere, we'll just throw it in. It's easy to pay for a week of storage and then move on.
Okay,
awesome. And then what about you, Sam? Have you had to do that yet?
No, because like I said, it hasn't been as long for me. I have not had to do that, but I just don't know. I don't know if I would take an assignment that I think I would probably just try to leave it somewhere. I don't know, but I mean, that's great advice from Brandon. I haven't hit that bump yet. So I think I've more so am looking for places where I can take it.
All right. Thank you. And then where do you prefer to park overnight as you are traveling? We've stayed many nights in Walmart parking lots.
Dude, wall docking is the best. That is literally, there's a term for it called wall docking. So my daughter, she is 7, loves when we're going through somewhere and I tell her, hey, we're going to drive all night, but you're going to wake up in a Walmart parking lot. Like she's like fist pumps, like this is awesome. We get to wake up and have donuts in the morning, and she knows that she gets to go into Walmart in her pajamas and like be on People of Walmart or whatever that is. So no, so much fun. But that is generally there, or rest stops. Again, Campendium has a lot of, you can find just random parking. Like they have a whole filter for that. So you can look at your route and see what would line up with you and read reviews on it. And if it says, hey, this is sketch, you're going to get heroin offered to you as soon as you pull in, like you should probably avoid that one. But you can find some really nice ones, especially for overnight doing that.
Okay, cool. I didn't realize that. That's new to me.
I don't quite have that luxury, so that is something you have to keep in mind. I stay at RV parks and I call places. I mean, there are places, like a couple places I called them and I was like, hey, I'm coming for the night. I have full hookups. And they're like, okay. And then I just go. I don't tell them I'm a tiny home. I just go. And I show up.
You don't have tanks on yours though, correct? So you can't just stop overnight somewhere.
No, I have to plan my trips out. I have to be like, where am I going to stay? Where am I stopping? Where's that RV park that I'm going to stop at? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense. So I guess, Lynn Ann, I maybe need a little bit more context here, but you asked what criteria do you look at when evaluating assignments? Is that in regards to kind of as far as like the tiny home or RV parking? If you'll throw it in the chat on nursing assignments. Well, do you have anything to add there?
I would throw in like the steps of what you should be doing is, especially with Trusted, when you are looking at your matches and you see a match that you love and you're like, hey, this looks awesome. Before you ever click request interview, you should be looking to see if you can find a campground or somewhere to park before you try to get your name in that hat. I'm not saying call and like reserve somewhere, but make sure that there are options, that you're not looking for the one diamond in the rough location. There are places like that it's just hard to find a spot. But for the most part, you can, if you're willing to commute, you can find somewhere within an hour's drive any direction to park an RV.
What about you, Sam, with a tiny home? What do you kind of take into consideration when you're looking?
Yeah, I think Brandon's advice is kind of spot on. If you want to take your tiny home with you, if you're in a good location and you want to stay there and you just want to take on a quick assignment, maybe it's like I know with COVID right now, there were a lot of short assignments, like 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 4 weeks, you could probably leave it or, pay for a month if you wanted to just kind of get up and leave or whatever. But otherwise, I would say definitely look at locations where you can find parking if this is what you want to do, if you want to take it with you. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Sam, this is for you. Do you have a washer dryer combo?
I do. It's not as great as, a regular washer and dryer, but it's great. And being in San Diego, I have hung a clothesline and I just hang my stuff out every time I can, save on electric and on the bill. And yeah, also good for the environment. So that's what I try to do.
Okay, perfect. Do you have any, and also this one was for you specifically, do you have any information on financing and what that was like for you?
So for me, and this is something I would tell people to look into, I went to a tiny home company that once we were already kind of underbilled and they were going to get started, they had a company reach out to them called Operation Tiny Home. And that company helps to get funding from people like Wells Fargo, Sutter Homes, and they give you money towards your house. So you have to apply for it. And they were like, hey, would you want to apply for this? And a lot of people they help are public servants. So EMTs, vets, people in the military. I didn't necessarily think as a nurse I would qualify, but I did apply and I was given money for it. So what I did is I put down a down deposit and they actually matched it. So that was a huge help for me. And then I have a mortgage. I go through a bank, I think it's in Utah, and they have me on a mortgage.
Thank you, Sam. All right. And so this one's also for you. A few questions about tiny homes here at the end. So Sarah was saying she's heard horror stories of tiny homes slipping over in windy conditions. What do you do when you are forced to stop because of windy conditions while driving? How do you navigate those unplanned stops?
Yeah. To be honest, I have not had that happen yet, but I can tell you When I picked it up in Idaho, it was the end of December and it was snowing and I went through the mountains and it was my first time towing. And you just make it work. I don't know how, but you make it work. You drive it really, really slow. I mean, I think the first time I towed, I didn't drive more than 40 miles an hour. And yeah, you just, I was very fortunate because you, like you said, you don't know what's going to happen and it is tall, you know, and there are sway bars you can get as well. Like I talked about, there are things you can get like tow. I have a tow kit, obviously, a tow package on my vehicle already, but there are sway bars you can get installed, which really help with stability. I actually don't have those because, like I'm saying, I jumped into this and I was like, okay, I'm going to learn as I go. So that is something I have also learned as I went. So sway bars are something I would recommend people look into because they do give you that extra. I pretty much, people tell you you never need them until that one time you do, and then they'll really help you. So I have looked into them since and have thought about getting them since. But you just drive really, really slow, like does not matter. And it was night, like it was the winter, it was night, it was snowing, I was in the mountains and it was 40 miles an hour. You just do it.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, Sam. Well, I think that's all the questions. Right. Well, here's one more. All right. Do you have any feedback, either one of you, about, no, you're fine, Megan. This will probably be the last one we take before we wrap things up for tonight, but any thoughts on how to manage doctor's appointments, like telehealth, or have your doctor's been accommodating prescription meds? I wear contact lenses now. I have to go into my prescribing doctor at least once a year. I guess that's kind of more in relation to the traveling, like how you manage that.
I'll throw, my wife has MS, and so we have to go back to her neurologist every year. She has to have MRIs. She gets monthly infusions. It is a pain in the butt to do anything as you travel around the country. It's whatever you're willing to put into it. Is there a solution? Yes. You just have to be willing to work hard enough to find it. I mean, if you know you have to go back to your home, plan on taking an assignment that direction that time of year, and just swing through. We generally try to do that and plan dental, doctor, getting everything caught up all at one time. Pretty much whenever our registration on the vehicles is due is when we start to head home. So yeah, just plan.
That's great advice, Brandon. Well, thank you so much to Brandon and Sam. You both were incredible. That was really, really enlightening. I feel like I learned so much myself. You might have inspired me to, but I can't decide which one now, RV or tiny home. I don't know. Both seems like they were completely wonderful. So thank you so much. To everyone who joined also, thank you. We are really appreciative that you came. If you'd like to join us for any of our other events, you can find them at trustedhealth.com/events. Our next one is next Wednesday, this upcoming Wednesday, and it's going to be about wilderness medicine, hiking injuries. I think will be really exciting. So please join us for that one. And after the event, we're going to send out a post-event survey. Please let us know how we did and if you liked the event. And please, that's a great space for sharing feedback about our lovely hosts. And so we can definitely pass on any lovely comments to them after the fact. So please complete that survey and we will see you at our next event. Bye, everyone.